Oftentimes, this work is done in classrooms of color by teachers of color. What is the role of white teachers and are in predominantly white classrooms in this work without having to spotlight students of color?
Well, the majority of teachers in the United States are white women. So this question is very relevant. I think that all white teachers have an obligation to become informed about racial history in this country and to keep updating ourselves, and to not feel that we, be smug and feel like, well, we have the right values, we're good, but to constantly challenge ourselves. I think that the other part of it is to engage students in these legitimate dialogues and legitimate discussions, and to have it be the responsibility of all the students to get themselves informed, and not simply to put it on the students of color, or if we're talking about issues of race, or on the girls if we're talking about issues of gender, but to have it be the responsibility of all the students to come prepared to engage in dialogue. And the last part of it is, though, to appreciate that if you're white, no matter how sincere you are about getting yourself informed, you have not had the Black experience. And that if an African-American student says that this is how I'm experiencing life, you take it seriously. And you don't just simply, discount it. So, it's not putting it on African-American kids to teach white kids about race. It's the responsibility of all of us. But to also, if you are white, to have a certain amount of humility about this, that, don't pretend you know everything just because you read some books.
If I could add as well,
Yeah,
I think that humility component is really important. I mean, for all teachers, it's important to have that humility and to respect the students. But I think when we're talking about these questions of race and racism in the classroom, in the past and in the present, that humility, especially for white teachers, is really important. Because one of the, and the most well-meaning, the most progressive, the most activist white teachers, it is especially important. Because when you walk into the classroom, and if you walk in, a white teacher walking into a classroom, especially with children of color, we'll talk more about sort of, white teacher in general with white students, but with children of color and students of color, that humility is so important because you're coming in as an unknown entity. And I think you come in shouldering all of that baggage, right, about white authority as you enter into that classroom. And that's just the reality. Kids don't know you, right? And you can't assume that they know your 40-year history of radical marching, right? And so that humility says, okay, now let me introduce myself. Let me show you who I am. And let's move forward. You can't just jump in and say, well, I can say this and I can say that because my other students know I'm on their side. That humility says no. That humility says, I got to start over. I have to build that trust and that has nothing to do with you individually. Right? That just has to do with the fact of who you represent in society. It's the same thing when you encounter white authority outside of the classroom. You can be the nicest cop in the world, but you're wearing the blue. So all of that baggage is associated with you. And the same thing with a white teacher entering into a classroom with students of color. And then I think additionally, it's important for when entering into these conversations, as Dr. Nucci pointed out, white teachers have to do this, right? That's the overwhelming majority of teachers, 80+%, right? So they have no choice of whether you can or cannot, or they should or they shouldn't. They absolutely have to, by necessity. But in entering into these conversations, the burden of education and learning and the burden of racial identification and talking about sort of questions of race shouldn't be put on the students themselves and even on white students. And so, if you're a white teacher, go into the classroom and have you acknowledged and said, hey, by the way, I'm white. Like, have you ever done that? Have you, and then unpacked what that means? You can't expect white students to have these serious conversations around race and racial identity if you yourself in the classroom haven't actually or ever acknowledged it, right? And so by engaging that, just acknowledging, you're now giving them permission to raise the issue, to raise the question, and to explore. Not to concretely and say, this is what it means. Like, no, this is what it is. This is who I am. This is how the world perceives me. And then we can unpack that together. And so by showing that humility, but then also being open about your own racial identity in the world, I think gives permission to your students to make that journey as well.